Well, welcome back, everybody. I hope you networked hard and still have plenty of energy because, of course, we still have some great content for the rest of today. Like yesterday, we have amazing speakers that will run right up to the end of the day, so please stay with us. With that, let's go straight on now to our next case study, which is Tony Edwards, who is CEO of Stepchange Global Ltd. Tony, are you there?
Yes, thanks very much, Stuart. First of all, I'd like to thank Adam and the team for putting on such a great event. It's been very, very interesting over the last couple of days to see all the great content that's been there. And really, I'd like to add to that content and talk about the very hot topic of remote operations, digitally enabled remote operations, and minimum staffing, new operational models. But first of all, I'd just like to spend a little bit of time introducing Stepchange Global. We are a independent, dedicated digital transformation and integrated operations advisory and consultancy company. It's all we do. We don't do anything else. We've been doing this for 12 years, and we only do this in oil and gas and mining companies, for mining companies. We do vision, strategy, operational models and pilots, all the way from the very top strategy work with big companies like Petronas, all the way down to you want to do your first digital implementation for a small company in Eagleford. And so we cover the whole spectrum of the digital advisory services. We are particularly interested in organizational models and operational models, and in particular minimum manned operational models, and we'll come on to that. But we also do a number of other things like integrated operations center and remote operations center design and implementation. And recently we've started doing a number of assessments which we feel that our clients find very, very useful at certain points in their digital transformation programs. Now, some of those assessments that we do are health checks on integrated operations centers, both for in mining and in oil and gas. We do integrated operations strategy assessment reviews, business cases, that kind of thing. We do digital strategy assessments and reviews, and we do those for greenfield projects. And we do the things which we're going to talk about today, greenfield minimum manning and brownfield minimum manning. I would also like to point out that we've got a remote operations and digital enablement benchmarking approach. We've got a really quite sophisticated survey and set of questions with 130 questions, which give you in great detail where your current operational project sits against industry best practice and industry average. And you can see some of the output from this on this screen. We now have 60 brownfield assets in the database, including assets from 3 super majors and another half dozen independent companies. So we've now got a very good database of onshore, offshore, oil, gas, and also around 18 major greenfield projects which are currently ongoing. So if you are interested in that, come and talk to us. We've been fortunate enough to work with some of the best companies in the world with respect to their digital transformation program. Early on, when we started out, our core client was Statoil, now Equinor, of course, and we worked with them for many years. But we've also worked with other super majors like ExxonMobil, like BP, like Shell. Most recently, we've done a lot of work with Repsol and Total. We're still ongoing working with Repsol at this time. But I'd also like to point out that we've done a lot of work, particularly in Australia. And I would say if there's one real hotspot of digital transformation, it is Australia. And there's a number of reasons for that, but they are now well ahead of any other regions that we currently work in. Just a little bit about remote operation centers and our background and our experience of that. We've done them all over the world for all different types of companies, including some of the largest remote control and operations centers in the world for mining companies like BHP, Teck Resources, Barrick Gold. But we've also done global drilling centers. We've done operation support centers for SAGD operations, for LNG operations. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about those today. So, on to the main topic. the current situation, basically at $40 to $50 a barrel, the current operating models and organizational models are unsustainable. They're unsustainable for marginal brownfield operations and marginal greenfield projects. And in both cases, you need to be able to maximize production, optimization, and recovery while significantly dropping OPEX. And you also need to maintain and improve your HSSE performance, and not take, not risk that operating model. That any changes you make will risk that performance. We also see that greenfield projects need to significantly reduce capex, and what we've seen over the last 8-9 years of doing this is that a combination of digitalization and minimum staffing approaches can achieve this. And we did our first study in this area with Statoil around 2011, and we've been doing studies with greenfield projects and brownfield projects ever since. Of course, this is now a pretty hot topic, and the number of projects we've done over the last 2 to 3 years has accelerated a lot, and we've now got a good body of evidence to support what we're going to go through with you now. So the first thing to say is that minimum facilities and unmanned operational models are not new. In fact, some of the oldest platforms in the North Sea, such as West Sol, Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie, have been remotely controlled since the 70s. So this is not new. But what is changing is the complexity of the operation and facilities that you can now remotely control, certainly from a greenfield perspective. And there are a number of good examples of that, which we will show you some of them today. We do these minimum staffing assessments. We do them for both brownfields and for greenfields. And in the greenfield case, it's very much about how do you kick the project off in the right way? How do you get it to be born digital? How do you get it to be minimum staffed by design? And so you design to a minimum staff operating model. In the brownfield setup, it's very much about how much remote operations can you apply to your brownfield operations, how much digital enablement can you apply to your brownfield operation, and what can that potentially do to your staffing model offshore, and how much of that work can you transfer to the beach, how much work can you eliminate. And we see this manifesting itself in a number of ways. With offshore platforms, it's about reduced headcounts, and we're seeing that certainly headcount reduction of between 15 and 50% is typically possible, and certainly 15 to 25 is pretty easily attainable. If you want to go to 50, then you start having to think about challenging the level of work and challenging what work gets done where. In terms of land-based operations, we see this in terms of a visit frequency, so moving away from visiting on a daily or weekly basis to a monthly or a quarterly. And also we see this in terms of the number of wells per operator. So we've been fortunate to do quite a lot of work in Canada, in the US, in unconventionals, and in Australia on this. And we've got great metrics that say, a traditional organization has probably 10 or 20 wells per operator. A digitally enabled, managed by exceptional operation has about 100 wells per operator. So these are the kind of performance gains that you can actually see. In terms of brownfield minimum staffing assessment, we did a minimum staffing assessment for a West Africa operation, 2 FPSOs, and we pretty quickly, within a 3 to 4 week study, showed how they could stepwise move to a lower POB of 70 and then down to 48, and eventually, and certainly how they could move to a zero manning model for their 2 TLPs. Now, something about minimum staffing operating models. We see 3 levels of this. One is remote operations and engineering support, which is now becoming very common, and this applies to both onshore and offshore developments. We see the second stage is when do you do remote control from a city centre location. And the third stage is really about the design of radically unmanned or minimum manned project concepts, which really need to be dialed in at day one. Now, taking the first set, and we've worked on all of these projects over the last 10 years. Here's some great examples of remote operation support. So the one that you see on the top left-hand side is actually Santos Cooper Basin in Australia. They've had their remote operation centres up and running since 2012, 2013. And they've been able to significantly minimum man their field operations because they've got these centres supporting the operations in the field. And they've moved from about 1,200 people down to about 850 in the field. The one on the left-hand side is Chevron, Gorgon, Wheatstone, which is a value chain integration opportunity, and they've been supporting those two LNG operations from this centre in Perth now for about 5 or 6 years, maybe 7. And the other examples are very similar. One is a global drilling centre. The other one is for a SAGD operation in Calgary. If we move on to the next level, this is now including full remote control from city centre locations, and we've seen this done in oil and gas a few times. Again, Santos has been a leader in this, and they are currently remotely controlling in excess of 5,000 wells and all the associated facilities from the 17th floor of their tower block in Brisbane, and those wells and facilities are all over Queensland. And so they have a single control room in that site, plus they have hubs to support the operational facilities in the field. The one that you see in the bottom left-hand corner is a midstream company. This is one that we designed this year. They are going to be remotely controlling 16,000 miles of pipeline, 100 compressors, and all the associated facilities from their office headquarters in Houston. And so, this is now being applied to these big land-based operations. The one you see in the middle top is Martin Linga. We were involved in this in the early days of Martin Linga when it was still a Total project. And this operation is being remotely controlled from the beach and is offshore Norway. And the last two examples I'll give you are both mining ones. The one in the middle at the bottom is actually the BHP IROC, which we designed in 2012, and that is supporting 4 mines, a rail system, and a port system in the field. And again, it's all being remotely controlled from Perth. And the one on the right-hand side is Escondida. This is the largest mine in the world by tonnage, and they're remotely controlling this massive mine with 16,000 people in the field from the center of Santiago. Now, just one last slide. If you take the next step here and you design these things as radically minimum man by design, you can see that you can also significantly drop the capex. This is a very big topic, so if you are interested in this, please come and talk to me afterwards. But we are seeing a lower OPEX of between 50 and 80%, lower facilities capex of between 10 and 50%, and improved availability and uptime. And there are some examples here, and we've seen it applied to SAGD operations, to FPSOs, to gas and LNG operations, to onshore gas, to offshore gas, to wellhead towers. And now the state of the art for a wellhead tower is a visit frequency of once a year. And so we've got a lot of data and information on this. We've done probably 12, 13 studies over the last 2-3 years on this, and we are getting consistent metrics and consistent drops in both capex, opex, and improved reliability. So just to finish up as a summary, challenging facility staff levels at operational sites is now proven and successful. We've got a great track record of doing this. Combining operation centers with remote controls and minimum facilities is a big opportunity. It is a very much an emerging trend to remotely control your operations from city center locations. The technology is actually not the problem. You can do it now. The barriers are around people, process, and organisation and governments. And, it's about the key commitment to the idea and actually just deliver against what you say you're going to do. And all operations are now candidates. So, the size of the prize is high, but it requires commitment and a change to the way you run major projects, certainly if you want to go to be radically minimum manned. And with that...
thank you, Tony. That's... as ever, you managed to cram in a huge amount of content, because I know you're so passionate about all the real projects that you've actually been involved in. We only have 1 minute before the next, but I did have a question for you. And just a reminder to those listening in, please do remember to use the chat box for questions, even for case studies, because we do want to engage all delegates all the time. But Tony, my question, thank you for highlighting that Australia has for some time been ahead of the curve with digital technology. And you've worked with those customers for a long time now. And I'm interested to know your view. Why are they so far ahead, and what can we learn here in the UK, particularly as, remember, I've been trying to link energy transition and digital being the way that we become globally competitive for energy transition technology. And if we're not digital, we would not be competitive. So Australia are ahead right now. Not only are they strong in energy transition, particularly green hydrogen, now strong with digital. So I would therefore say they're number one in the world for potential now to create a capability. What can we learn from that? Why are they so far ahead?
Well, one of the reasons they're so far ahead is their burning bridge arrived earlier than anywhere else. So what happened in 2011 and 12 is you had 14 LNG projects going off and another half dozen massive mining projects going on, and they just didn't have any people. And so if you looked at the operational model in a Cooper Basin of one operator looking after 20 wells, you just could not recruit enough people to do that to a 10,000 well development, of which there was 3 of them going off in Queensland. So you had to start from the premise that we just can't get the people. And if we can't get the people, we've got to be more efficient in the way we use our people. And the only way we can do that is doing it remotely and going to a manage and operate by exception model and telling people where to go on a daily basis. And so it was really, they met their crunch before everybody else. And
so it was a resource crunch, and rather than abandon the opportunity, they then had to accept, okay, we can do this without people. We know we can. Let's get on with it. So, okay,
so
Tony,
and not a cost per barrel crunch.
No, that's fascinating, and that we may well be in that place because I think the oil market will recover as vaccines come in. There'll suddenly be a bow wave of work coming in to some degree, and let's hope in the UK we then respond in the same way with let's go digital. So, Tony, as ever, you always stimulate so many brilliant ideas. Great to hear from you again, and thank you to you.